The dust swirled across the parched main street of Redemption, a forgotten speck on the New Mexico Territory map, where hope came to die and secrets found fertile ground. At 53, Marshal Caleb Thornton had seen enough bloodshed to last 3 lifetimes. His weathered face, creased by sun and sorrow, told stories he'd never speak aloud. 20 years wearing the Tin Star had earned him respect, fear, and enemies in equal measure. The townsfolk nodded respectfully as he made his morning rounds, boots crunching on the hard-packed dirt, the weight of his Colt Peacemaker a familiar comfort against his hip. "Morning, Marshal," called Samuel Reed from the general store's porch. "Gonna be another scorcher today." Caleb tipped his hat in acknowledgement, squinting at the red-gold horizon. "Always is, Sam." His voice carried the gravelly texture of a man who'd swallowed too much trail dust and whiskey over the decades. The town was stirring to life. Shopkeepers sweeping porches, the smithy's hammer already ringing, ranch hands stumbling bleary-eyed from the saloon after a night of cards and cheap liquor. Redemption wasn't much, but it was his to protect. After losing his family farm during the war, then riding with the Texas Rangers, Caleb had found an uneasy peace here. He'd arrived a decade ago, gun-hand renowned and soul-weary, looking for a quiet place to serve out his remaining years. Hey friends, thanks for watching our channel. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel right now. I'm curious, what city are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. As he approached the doctor's office, his pace slowed. Through the window, he caught a glimpse of Eleanor Winters, the physician who'd arrived 6 months ago. At 35, she carried herself with quiet dignity, despite the whispers. A woman doctor was still something of a marvel in these parts. Her husband had died at Antietam, leaving her to raise their daughter alone while completing her medical training back east. Redemption hadn't welcomed her warmly at first. But a town desperate for medical care couldn't afford pride. Inside the modest clinic, Eleanor dabbed a cool cloth across Jenny Miller's feverish brow. The 16-year-old had contracted a nasty infection after cutting herself on rusty farm equipment. "Please stop. I'm too weak," she moaned as Eleanor prepared to change the dressing. "The wound needs cleaning, Jenny," Eleanor said firmly, though compassion softened her voice. "I know it hurts, but we must prevent the infection from spreading." Jenny's father paced nearby, hat clutched in calloused hands. "She gonna make it, Doc?" Eleanor met his worried gaze with steady confidence. "She's young and strong, Mr. Miller. With proper care and God's grace, I believe she will recover." Caleb watched from the doorway, struck as always by Eleanor's gentle strength. Their paths crossed often in a town this size. Bullet wounds and knife fights kept both lawman and doctor busy. Professional respect had gradually bloomed into something deeper, though neither had spoken of it. Both carried too many ghosts to rush into sentiments best left unexamined. Eleanor noticed him then, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. "Marshal, what brings you by this morning?" "Just checking in, Doc." He nodded toward Jenny. "Heard the Miller girl took ill." Eleanor wiped her hands on her apron. "She's fighting hard." She lowered her voice as she stepped closer. "Unlike some patients who ignore my advice about reopening knife wounds by brawling with cattle rustlers." The ghost of a smile touched Caleb's lips. 3 weeks prior, he'd taken a blade between the ribs, breaking up a fight. Eleanor had stitched him up with a lecture that scorched harder than the whiskey she'd used to clean the wound. "A man's got to do his job, Doc." "A man's no good to anyone dead," she countered, the familiar argument lacking heat. Their moment of connection shattered as the door burst open. Ezra Johnson, a young ranch hand from the Cross T, staggered in, face pale beneath his tan. "Marshal, they got Miss Rebecca. Cross T's been hit." Caleb's hand instinctively moved to his gun. "Who's got her, son? Slow down and tell it straight." "Riders came at dawn," Ezra gasped, clutching a bloodied arm. 8, maybe 10 men, hit the bunkhouse first. Shot Mr. Thompson when he came out. They took Miss Rebecca, said they'd be in touch about terms. Cold dread settled in Caleb's gut. Rebecca Thompson was the 18-year-old daughter of Henry Thompson, owner of the Cross T and the region's wealthiest rancher. More importantly, she was Eleanor's niece, her sister's child, who'd been staying at the ranch while her parents traveled to Santa Fe on business. Eleanor's face drained of color. "Rebecca? They took Rebecca?" Her voice trembled with fear and disbelief. "I'll get her back," Caleb promised, already calculating odds and options. Kidnappings rarely ended well in the territories. "Johnson, who were they? You recognize any faces?" The young cowboy grimaced as Eleanor began examining his wounded arm. "One of them was Seth Blackwood, I'm certain. Recognize that scarred cheek of his." The name hit Caleb like a physical blow. Seth Blackwood, a name from his past, a debt long unpaid. Years ago, before redemption, Caleb had brought in Seth's older brother to hang for the murder of a family near Fort Worth. Seth had sworn vengeance, but then disappeared into the Badlands. If he'd resurfaced and taken Rebecca, this wasn't about ransom. It was about making Caleb suffer. "Doc, patch Johnson up quick as you can," Caleb ordered, already moving toward the door. "I'm gathering men. We ride within the hour." Eleanor grabbed his arm, fingers digging into weathered leather. "Caleb, wait. This is my niece. Let me come with you. You'll need a doctor if—" She couldn't finish the thought. "Absolutely not," he growled, harsher than intended. "These are dangerous men, Eleanor. I can't worry about protecting you while tracking them." Her chin lifted in that stubborn way he'd come to admire. "I'm not asking for protection. I'm offering my skills. And she's my blood." Caleb hesitated, torn between admiration and concern. Before he could answer, the door swung open again, revealing Henry Thompson himself, blood seeping through a makeshift bandage on his shoulder, rage and fear warring on his face. "Marshal," Thompson gasped. "They left this." He thrust a crumpled note into Caleb's hand. The message was crude but clear. "The girl for Thornton, alone, Devil's Canyon. 2 days." It was signed with a crude drawing of a blackwood tree. Eleanor read over his shoulder, her breath catching. "What does this mean? Why would they want you?" Caleb's expression darkened. "Old business. Nothing for you to worry about." "It became my business when they took my niece." Eleanor's voice rose, drawing stares from Jenny Miller and her father. Thompson looked between them, desperation etched in every line of his face. "Whatever it costs, Marshal. Whatever it takes. Just bring my daughter home." Caleb nodded grimly. "I aim to, Henry, but not the way they're expecting." He turned to Eleanor, decision made. "Doc, gather whatever medical supplies you might need. Light traveling only. We leave in 30 minutes. Relief and determination flashed across her face. "I'll be ready." As Eleanor hurried to prepare, Caleb stepped onto the boardwalk, squinting at the harsh morning sun. Seth Blackwood had waited years for revenge, orchestrating this moment carefully. The choice seemed simple: trade his life for the girl's. But Caleb hadn't survived this long by walking into traps. There had to be another way, and he had 2 days to find it. Back in his office, Caleb unlocked the heavy oak cabinet behind his desk. Inside lay weapons he hadn't touched in years, reminders of a more violent past. A Winchester .73 with notches carved in its stock, a Bowie knife with a bone handle, and wrapped in oilcloth, a second Colt Peacemaker, its ivory grip yellowed with age. The matched pair had been a gift from a Texas Ranger captain after Caleb brought down the Sutton gang single-handed. "Didn't think I'd be needing you again," he murmured, strapping on the second gun belt. Deputy Will Parker appeared in the doorway, young and eager. "Marshal, word's spreading about the Thompson girl. How many men you want rounded up?" "None," Caleb replied, checking his ammunition. "This is personal business. Blackwood wants me, not a posse. Too many guns might spook him into doing something rash." Parker's boyish face creased with concern. "You can't go against Blackwood's gang alone. That's suicide, sir." "Not alone," Caleb corrected. "Doc Winters is coming to tend to the girl, and I'm bringing you, if you've got the stomach for it. 3 of us, traveling light and quiet." Parker straightened, pride and anxiety warring in his expression. "I'll be ready, sir, but, he hesitated. "Folks say Seth Blackwood's not right in the head, that he collects ears from his victims." Caleb checked the action on his rifle, the metallic click unnaturally loud in the quiet office. "Folks say a lot of things, son. Most ain't worth repeating." He fixed the young deputy with a hard stare. "What matters is this. A girl's life hangs in the balance, and we're the ones standing between her and harm. Everything else is just noise." Outside, Eleanor waited beside 2 pack horses, her medical bag secured to one saddle. She'd changed into a practical riding outfit, split skirt and sturdy boots, her auburn hair braided and tucked beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Nothing remained of the composed doctor except the determined set of her jaw. "You still have time to reconsider, Doc," Caleb said, leading his own mount from the livery. "Where we're headed ain't no place for a lady." Eleanor's green eyes flashed. "I stopped being merely a lady when I cut off my first gangrenous limb, Marshal, and Rebecca needs me." A ghost of a smile touched Caleb's lips. "Fair enough." He checked his pocket watch. "Devil's Canyon is a hard day-and-a-half ride. We'll need to push the horses." As they mounted up, townsfolk gathered to watch. Henry Thompson approached, arm in a sling, face haggard with worry. "Bring her home, Marshal, whatever it takes." Caleb nodded solemnly. "You have my word." With that, the 3 riders spurred their horses southward, toward the rugged mountains that marked the territory's most lawless region. Dust billowed behind them as redemption shrank in the distance. Ahead lay uncertainty and danger, a journey from which Caleb privately wondered if any of them would return. The terrain grew increasingly harsh as they rode, transitioning from scrubland to rocky foothills. The sun beat down mercilessly, the air shimmering with heat above the baked earth. Eleanor kept pace without complaint, though Caleb noted the tightness around her eyes that spoke of discomfort. Parker rode scout position, youthful energy making him restless in the saddle. "Tell me about Blackwood," Eleanor finally said as they paused to rest the horses beside a trickling stream. "Why my niece? Why you?" Caleb stared at the distant mountains, weighing how much to share. 10 years ago, I tracked and captured Jeremiah Blackwood, Seth's older brother. He'd murdered a homesteader family near Fort Worth, 5 of them, including children. He took a drink from his canteen, the water warm and metallic tasting. Jeremiah hanged, as was right and proper. Seth swore he'd make me watch someone I cared for die before killing me. Eleanor's face paled. "And now he's using Rebecca to draw you out." Her voice hardened. "But why Rebecca? How would he know of any connection between you and my niece?" "Blackwood's been watching, planning." Caleb's expression darkened. "Maybe he intended to take you, realized it would be harder from town than grabbing the girl from the ranch." Eleanor's sharp intake of breath told him he'd misspoken. Me? Why would he think you care particularly for me? Heat that had nothing to do with the sun crept up Caleb's neck. A man watches a woman a certain way, Eleanor. Blackwood would have seen it, same as anyone with eyes. He busied himself checking his horse's cinch. We should keep moving, daylight's burning. They made camp that night in a sheltered arroyo, the small fire barely enough to heat coffee and beans. The desert nights turned bitterly cold. Stars sprayed across the black sky like diamond dust. Eleanor sat wrapped in a blanket, staring into the flames, exhaustion evident in the slump of her shoulders. Try to rest, Caleb advised, settling beside her with a tin cup of coffee. Tomorrow will be harder riding. I keep thinking about her, terrified, not understanding why this is happening. Eleanor's voice broke slightly. Rebecca's just a girl, Caleb. 18, with her whole life ahead of her. We'll get her back, he promised, though the words felt hollow even to his ears. Eleanor studied his profile in the firelight. There's something you're not telling me. I've treated enough liars to know when a man's holding back truth. Caleb sighed, suddenly feeling every one of his 53 years. Devil's Canyon is a death trap for anyone coming in uninvited. Narrow passage, high walls, perfect for ambush. Blackwood doesn't expect me to bring anyone. He wants me alone. Unarmed, an easy sacrifice. Then we need another way in, Eleanor said simply. There isn't one. Except, he hesitated. There's an old mining trail that cuts through the mountain above the canyon. Treacherous, hasn't been used in years, might have collapsed entirely. Hope flickered in Eleanor's eyes. But it could give us an advantage. Come in from above? Caleb nodded slowly. If it's still passable, if Blackwood hasn't fought to guard it. He took a long sip of coffee, the bitterness matching his mood. Even then, the odds are long, Eleanor. I need you to understand, I might have to trade myself for the girl. If it comes to that, you and Parker get her out. Don't look back. No. The word was quiet but firm. We'll find another way. I didn't survive war, widowhood, and medical school to watch a good man sacrifice himself needlessly. Something unspoken passed between them in the firelight, an acknowledgement of feelings neither had dared voice. Caleb reached out slowly, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. Never thought to find something worth fighting for again, he murmured. Life has a strange way of surprising an old lawman. Eleanor leaned slightly into his touch. You're not as old as you pretend to be, Caleb Thornton. And we have a girl to save before we discuss what might lie between us. He withdrew his hand reluctantly, nodding. Get some sleep, Doc. Dawn comes early in these parts. Dawn indeed arrived with brutal swiftness, painting the landscape in harsh oranges and reds. They broke camp quickly, Parker unusually quiet as they saddled the horses. The young deputy had heard enough the previous night to understand the danger they faced. Marshal, Parker said finally, voice low so Eleanor couldn't hear, if things go sideways, I want you to know I'll get the doc and the girl out. You can count on me. Caleb clasped the young man's shoulder. I know, son. That's why you're here. They rode hard through the morning, the terrain growing increasingly treacherous. By midday, they reached a narrow trail winding up the mountainside, the old mining path Caleb had mentioned. They dismounted, leading the horses carefully along the precipitous track. We'll leave the horses here, Caleb decided when they reached a small plateau with sparse grass and a seep of water trickling from the rocks. Continue on foot, the canyon's about 2 miles ahead. Eleanor checked her medical bag, face set with determination. How much time do we have? Caleb squinted at the sun. Blackwood expects me at sundown. We've got about 5 hours to get into position. The final approach was grueling, scrambling over loose shale, working their way through narrow passages where the old trail had partially collapsed. Parker took the lead, young and nimble, while Caleb stayed close to Eleanor, offering a steadying hand when needed. Despite the exertion, she never complained, her focus absolute. Finally, they reached a rocky outcropping overlooking Devil's Canyon. Below, a natural amphitheater formed where the canyon widened slightly before narrowing. Again, a small camp had been established. 3 tents, horses picketed nearby, men moving about with the casual arrogance of those who believed themselves safe from surprise. Caleb's experienced eye counted 8 men. In the largest tent, occasionally visible through the open flap, sat a young woman, Rebecca, bound but apparently unharmed. "She's alive," Eleanor whispered, relief evident in her voice. "For now," Caleb replied grimly. "Blackwood will wait until I arrive before doing anything permanent." He studied the layout below, mentally calculating angles and distances. "Parker, there's a position on that western ridge that should give you clear shots into the camp. Take my Winchester. It's sighted better than your carbine." The deputy nodded soberly, accepting the rifle. "What about me?" Eleanor asked. "You stay hidden until we've secured Rebecca. First sign of trouble, you get to her. Assess her condition." Caleb met her eyes steadily. "No heroics, Eleanor. Your job is the girl, nothing else." Eleanor nodded reluctantly. "And you?" Caleb checked both revolvers, expression hardening. "I'm going to give Blackwood exactly what he asked for. Me, alone, unarmed." "That's insane," Eleanor hissed. "He'll kill you the moment you're in his sights." "Not right away. Men like Blackwood want to savor revenge." Caleb's voice was chillingly matter-of-fact. "He'll want me to beg first. That gives Parker time to take position, and you time to reach Rebecca when the shooting starts." "There has to be another way," Eleanor insisted, clutching his arm. "Sometimes there isn't, Doc." Caleb's weathered face softened momentarily. "Some debts can only be paid one way." As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Caleb removed his gun belts, handing them to Eleanor. "Keep these safe for me." The words carried a weight beyond the simple request. "I expect them back," she replied, voice thick with emotion, "along with the man they belong to." For an instant, Caleb's stoic facade cracked. He bent forward, pressing his lips to hers in a brief, fierce kiss. "Just in case," he murmured as he pulled away. Before she could respond, he turned and began making his way down toward the canyon floor, unarmed, as promised. Parker was already moving toward his assigned position, disappearing among the rocks like a shadow. Eleanor watched Caleb's descending figure, her heart pounding with fear, and something else, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel since burying her husband. "Be careful," she whispered, though he was too far away to hear. In the camp below, alertness rippled through Blackwood's men as they spotted the lone figure approaching. Seth Blackwood himself emerged from the main tent, a tall, lean man with a face bisected by a vicious scar. Even from a distance, his predatory stance was evident. Eleanor clutched Caleb's revolvers, the metal warm from his body heat. She wasn't a violent woman by nature. She dedicated her life to healing, not harming. But watching Caleb walk deliberately into danger awakened something primal within her. If it came to it, she realized with sudden clarity, she could pull these triggers to protect him, to protect Rebecca, to protect the fragile future that had begun taking shape in her mind. "Just hold on," she murmured, gathering her resolve and medical bag. Just hold on. The sun hung low over the western ridges as Caleb reached the canyon floor. A profound calm had settled over him, the same stillness he'd experienced before every life or death confrontation in his long career. His senses sharpened, cataloging details with preternatural clarity. The metallic tang of gun oil, the nervous shifting of horses, the predatory gleam in Seth Blackwood's eyes as he stepped forward. "Marshal Thornton," Blackwood called, voice echoing against the canyon walls. "Right on time. Always was a man of your word, wasn't you?" Caleb continued his steady approach, hands conspicuously empty at his sides. "I'm here, Blackwood, alone and unarmed, as instructed. Where's the girl?" Blackwood's scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile on a different man. "Alive, for now." He gestured, and two men dragged Rebecca from the tent. The girl's face was tear-streaked but defiant, Thompson blood evident in her lifted chin despite her bound hands and feet. "Let her go," Caleb said evenly. "You've got me. That's what this is about." Blackwood circled him slowly, like a wolf sizing up wounded prey. 10 years I've waited for this moment, Marshal. 10 years planning how to make you suffer like I suffered, watching my brother swing. He drew a wicked-looking knife from his belt. "I aim to take my time with you." From her position on the ridge, Eleanor could see everything unfolding with terrible clarity. Parker had reached his vantage point, the Winchester trained on the camp below, awaiting the moment to strike. She clutched her medical bag in one hand, Caleb's revolvers secured at her waist. Ready to move the instant chaos erupted. "You won't live to enjoy your revenge," Caleb told Blackwood calmly. "Kill me, kill the girl, doesn't matter. Law's got a long memory, and you'll swing higher than your brother ever did." Blackwood laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "Maybe so, but I'll die satisfied." He pressed the knife tip against Caleb's cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. "I want you to beg, lawman. Beg like my brother begged." "Your brother didn't beg," Caleb said quietly. He laughed all the way to the gallows, proud of the innocent blood he'd spilled. He died the same way he lived, without a shred of human decency. Rage flashed across Blackwood's face. He backhanded Caleb hard enough to split his lip. "You lie." "I was there," Caleb replied, spitting blood onto the dirt. "I watched him die. He wasn't worth the rope they used to hang him, and you're cut from the same worthless cloth." With a roar of fury, Blackwood raised his knife. The moment stretched, time seeming to slow as Eleanor held her breath. Then 3 things happened almost simultaneously. The sharp crack of Parker's rifle split the air. Blackwood stumbled as a bullet tore through his shoulder, and chaos erupted in the camp. Caleb moved with surprising speed for a man his age, driving his fist into Blackwood's wounded shoulder before wrestling away the knife. Gunfire erupted as Parker methodically picked off Blackwood's men from his elevated position, creating confusion and panic. Eleanor seized her moment, scrambling down a narrow game trail toward Rebecca. 2 of Blackwood's men lay wounded or dead, the others returning fire toward Parker's position or closing in on Caleb, who was now locked in desperate hand-to-hand combat with Blackwood. She reached Rebecca, using Blackwood's dropped knife to cut her bonds. "Can you walk?" she asked urgently, checking the girl for injuries. Rebecca nodded, eyes wide with fear and hope. "Aunt Eleanor, how?" "No time," Eleanor interrupted, pressing one of Caleb's revolvers into the girl's trembling hands. "Stay behind me. If anyone threatens you, shoot them." Below, Caleb and Blackwood grappled in the dirt, each fighting with the desperation of men who knew only one would walk away. Despite his wounded shoulder, Blackwood fought with maniacal strength, eventually pinning Caleb beneath him, hands closing around the lawman's throat. "Die slow, Marshal," he wheezed, blood staining his shirt. "Die knowing you failed her." Spots danced before Caleb's eyes as his lungs screamed for air. His hands scrabbled uselessly in the dirt, searching for a weapon, a rock, anything to break Blackwood's grip. Just as darkness began closing in from the edges of his vision, a single gunshot cracked across the canyon. Blackwood's grip slackened suddenly, surprise replacing rage in his eyes as blood bloomed across his chest. He toppled sideways, revealing Eleanor standing 20 paces away, Caleb's second peacemaker steady in her hands, smoke still curling from the barrel. "Not today," she said quietly, lowering the weapon as Caleb gasped for air. The remaining outlaws, seeing their leader fall, broke and ran for their horses. Parker's rifle cracked twice more, dropping 2 before the rest escaped into the gathering dusk. Eleanor rushed to Caleb's side, medical instincts taking over as she checked his injuries. "Bruised trachea, split lip, possible concussion from that fall," she murmured, fingers gentle on his throat. "You'll live, Marshal, though you might wish otherwise when the pain sets in properly." Caleb coughed, voice raspy. "Didn't know. You could shoot like that, Doc." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "My father believed every woman should know how to handle a firearm. One of his better ideas." She helped him to a sitting position. "Rebecca's safe, scared but unharmed." Relief washed over his battered face. "Parker? Still up there, covering us. He's fine." Caleb reached for her hand, clutching it with surprising strength. "You saved my life." Eleanor's composure finally cracked, tears welling in her eyes. "You risked yours for my niece. I'd say that makes us even." As Parker helped round up the remaining horses and secure the wounded outlaws for transport back to Redemption, Eleanor tended to injuries, Blackwood's men first, then Rebecca's chafed wrists, and finally Caleb's wounds. Professional detachment kept her hands steady, though her heart still raced with the aftermath of violence and fear. They made camp in the canyon that night, too exhausted to begin the journey home. Rebecca slept fitfully near the fire, occasionally whimpering until Eleanor soothed her back to sleep. Parker took first watch, young face now bearing the solemn expression of someone who'd seen more of life's harshness than he bargained for. Caleb found Eleanor sitting alone at the edge of the firelight, staring at the stars. He eased down beside her, movements stiff with pain. "You should be resting," she admonished softly, doctor's instincts rising. "Couldn't sleep." He studied her profile in the dim light. "Killing changes a person, Eleanor, even when necessary." She nodded slowly. "I know. I've lost patience despite my best efforts. This is different, but perhaps not entirely." Her voice grew reflective. "I took an oath to do no harm, yet today I chose to harm one man to save another." She turned to meet his gaze directly. "I would make the same choice again." "That's the thing about hard choices," Caleb said. "The hardest ones are the ones you'd make the same way, even knowing the cost." Eleanor's hand found his in the darkness. "When I saw you beneath him, I felt something I haven't felt since the war. That absolute clarity that comes with knowing exactly what must be done, consequences be damned. I know that feeling well." Caleb's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. spent most of my life chasing or running from it. And now, the question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Caleb looked toward the sleeping form of Rebecca, then back to Eleanor, his weathered face softening. Now I'm thinking, maybe there's something to be said for putting down roots, for finding reasons to stay instead of reasons to go. His voice roughened with emotion. If a certain doctor might be amenable to keeping a broken-down old lawman around. Eleanor's free hand rose to cup his cheek. I've patched you up this far, Marshal Thornton. I suppose I could be persuaded to continue the job on a more permanent basis. Their kiss was gentle this time, a promise rather than a desperate farewell. When they separated, Eleanor rested her head against his shoulder, exhaustion finally claiming her as she leaned into his strength. As dawn painted the canyon walls with golden light, they began the journey home. Rebecca rode double with Eleanor, the girl's resilience already asserting itself as she peppered Parker with questions about his sharpshooting. The young deputy answered with increasing confidence, shoulders squared with newfound pride. Caleb led the way, battered but unbowed. The weight of Seth Blackwood's death lay on his conscience, another ghost to join the many he'd accumulated over decades of enforcing frontier justice. Yet for the first time in years, those ghosts seemed balanced by something else, the promise of days ahead that might contain more than mere survival. When they crested the final rise overlooking redemption, the town spread before them like a modest promise of civilization in the wilderness. Church steeple, false-fronted stores, the doctor's office with its clean white paint, all familiar, yet somehow changed by the journey they'd undertaken. Home, Eleanor murmured, the word carrying new resonance. Caleb nodded, allowing himself a rare, full smile that transformed his weathered face. Home, he agreed, and spurred his horse forward toward whatever waited beyond the next horizon. As the townsfolk gathered to welcome them back, Henry Thompson rushing forward to embrace his daughter, tears streaming unashamedly down his face, Caleb caught Eleanor's eye across the crowd. No words were needed. They had faced death together and chosen life instead. In this harsh land, where each day was a victory against unforgiving odds, they had found in each other a simple, profound truth. Sometimes the strongest act is not to stand alone, but to lean on another when strength fails. Please stop. I'm too weak, she had moaned in exhaustion as they made the final miles toward town. He had reached across to steady her in the saddle, his hand warm and sure. Then I'll be strong enough for us both, he had promised. Today and all the days to come. It was enough. In the end, it was everything.